I think let's wait for a minute or two before we officially kick this off. I believe there are several participants will be joining very soon, so please bear with us for a minute or so. Thank you. Yep, looks like we have 200 plus already joining. So I think we can pretty much start now. Um, so selamat pagi, Bapak dan Ibu. Very good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Hope everyone is doing well in this difficult situation. A very warm welcome to our PwC Indonesia together with UiPath webinars. Our topics of today is to discuss and share about the robotic process automations for finance functions in Indonesia. My name is Subianto. I'm your host for today's session. I'm leading our digital services here in PwC Indonesia, where we help and bring confidence to our clients in embarking their digital transformations agenda, including RPA. So today we will explore in more details on how finance functions are leveraging robotic process automations, in particular discussing what are the challenges, what are the opportunities that will be covered in today's sessions. So if I can go to the next slide. Yep. So this is the agenda for today. So PwC Indonesia, we have conducted a survey in early 2020 for the RPAs for Finance Function Indonesia. So there are numbers of valuable findings, which my colleague Ravi Ifaturi, our RPA lead in PwC Indonesia, will later on share with you some of the findings. And after that, follow with our UiPath colleagues to share with you some hands-on experience and what are their observations as well, including the experience in the Indonesia markets, which will be presented by Vels, Kevin, and also Michael. And today also we have a very good panelists joining us. So we have panel sessions following after the presentations, which you are invited to also asking questions through the Q&A chat, which we will try as much as we can to answer a number of them. So we are very fortunate today to have the distinguished panelists as well as speakers joining. So let me briefly introduce them. So actually we'll start with the very right-hand side, the ladies first, yeah. So Bu Rika. Bu Rika is the CFO of PT Dwi Daya Worldwide with her current roles Burika is leading the company in embarking the RPA journey, starting from the finance related processes. And then also my fellow partners, Bu Juliana. Bu Juliana is our risk assurance leader who has served a wide range of companies in the business process improvements, governance, risks and controls area, which RPA actually one of the key areas that Juliana and team is also exploring on. And also our colleagues from UiPath, Val is the VP of Global Business and Finance Operations, which are actually having overseeing also the Asia Pac region. So Val will be able to share his observation as well on how actually the adoptions of UiPath in the regions. Yeah. And then Kevin is actually overseeing in particular Indonesia and also Vietnam. He has an in-depth experience in the UiPath and also have a number of hands-on experience together with Michael. I think, apologize, Michael, your picture is not here, which later on we share with all of you some of the hands-on and what are their observation as well in the RPA adoptions, in particular using UiPath. And then my colleague, Henki, who is our risk assurance managers, which is focusing very much his time on this RPA. And he also have the hands-on experience in helping clients with the RPA adoptions. Last but not least, my fellow colleague, Ravi. Ravi is our RPA lead, who actually has been focusing a lot in this particular area, which will also be sharing with you our recent finding in this RPA adoption in the finance functions. So I think that's pretty much what we wanted to cover. And thank you again to all the panelists and speakers for joining. So without further ado, I will hand the sessions to my colleague Ravi to run you through what are our key findings in the recent survey. Ravi, over to you.
Yeah. Thanks, Pak Subi, for the introduction, and Salamat Pagi, everyone. And once again, thank you very much for your enthusiastic participation in this session. So over the next 25 minutes, I would like to take you through some of the key highlights of our first Indonesia CFO survey report on the topic of robotic process automation for the finance function in Indonesia. So next slide, please. So I will start my presentation by setting the foundation for everyone with respect to what is RPA, what is robotic process automation. So after that, I think I'll quickly jump into the key takeaways of the findings of our survey and end my presentation by sharing some of the best practices you can follow during your RPA implementations. So with that agenda, so next slide, please. So very, very quickly, so what is robotic process automation? Or in short, we call it as RPA. So I'm sure most of you attending this session, and there is a lot of interest for this session. So most of you might have heard about RPA and have some understanding of it. So if any of you still do not understand what RPA is, I think let me give you a very simplistic explanation. Automating your business process using software robots is essentially RPA. A software robot, or in short, it's also called as bot, can work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and it can continuously do its work without any coffee breaks or any other breaks which we as humans take in our day-to-day activity. So if you have deployed a bot in your operations, it is equivalent to having 3 of your employees who work 8 hours every day. So essentially, if you see on the slide, a bot can mimic user interactions. Any user, whether he or she, while working on their laptop, opening up any IT applications, whether it might be ERP systems, reporting applications, and doing any of their transactions, a bot can mimic all of those transactions. And I think the other significant advantage of a bot is a bot is not a department siloed kind of person. A bot can automate a finance process, they can automate a HR process, a sales process, or any process which you have in your business. Essentially, a bot can be configured to automate that process. And there is a lot of other stuff which bot can do, which I'll also touch upon in the next few slides as well. So let me move to the next slide, please. So I think as we understand, a bot can carry out a number of processes. So I think the next big question is a bot very specific to any industry? Is RPA very specific to any industry? So I think that's what we wanted to cover in this slide, that a RPA solution is industry agnostic. So any industry can actually implement robotic process automation solutions across their functions. So as you can see, the colored balls in green highlight the extent of the RPA adoption in each of these different functions, whether it might be finance, procurement, HR, and any of the industry specific processes. And very clearly, when you see the slide, the finance function is something which has the highest adoption rate for RPA across industries. So if you see whether it might be banking, manufacturing, insurance, energy and utilities, the finance function is something which has the highest adoption rate of RPA. Why is something which we'll also cover in the next few slides. Yeah, next slide, please. The next slide. Yeah. So with this, with the focus on the finance function, in the months of January and February of this year, we launched a CFO survey to understand how finance functions in Indonesia across sectors are leveraging the RPA solutions. I think in March, when COVID hit, we did decide to postpone the release of this report. However, as we are releasing this report in August, even now, COVID-19 is the main concern for people and businesses both in Indonesia as well as globally. However, we believe that the insights which our report has, which our survey has brought out, is more relevant now and important because as we adapt towards the new normal, as companies digitize their operations, I think RPA will be as a solution, as a technology, will be much more important in the future. So next slide, please. So, what are some of the key takeaways which we understood from the CFO survey which we have conducted? At a very, very high level, these are some of the 6 takeaways. In the subsequent slides, I will cover more detail about each of these insight as well. So the top one, as you can see, is the finance function in Indonesia across sectors is still in an early stage of RPA adoption. Obviously, there are some companies which are in a much advanced stage. But however, as an aggregate, if you see, there is still a huge potential opportunity available in Indonesia to automate the finance function. And second, if you see, the primary driver for the finance function automation is to achieve operational efficiency. We will also cover why is it so in the subsequent slides. I think upskilling finance professionals is a very important agenda which most of the CFOs have on their plate. And it's also true for automation. And I would just quickly like to cover the point number 5, which actually states that around 94% of the respondents have indicated that they would either increase or maintain the same level of investment in RPA in the next year. And lastly, I think the most important one is if you see technical complexity, skills, and operational risks are some of the few risks which have been highlighted by CFOs as some of the top risks in implementing or challenges in implementing RPA. Yeah, next slide, please. So I think before I go into this slide, I think we need to set a context of why this is so in Indonesia. So over the years, we have seen that Indonesian companies have actively started to drive digital technology adoption to meet their customer expectations. So we as PwC have been interacting with a number of companies in Indonesia who are, and a number of CFOs as well, who are digitizing their finance function by implementing ERP systems, by implementing reporting systems, business planning systems, as well as enhancing the skills of their finance executives. We believe that the logical step in this journey would be to once they implement these IT systems, the next step would be to automate some of the activities which their finance executives do using these systems, so that their finance executives can move into a role of something called a finance business partner, who will be more partnering with the business to contribute more insights and deliver better business decisions. So in this context, if you see wherein the maturity of the Indonesian companies is evolving slowly and steadily, and more companies are implementing these IT systems. In that context, I think we can understand that the RPA journey in Indonesia in the finance function is still in an early stage. So if you see, 42% of the CFOs have indicated that they're either evaluating the RPA use cases or standardizing their finance process to prepare for automation. So as a trend, what we see is over the next 2 years, and as businesses adopt to the new normal, we would see that more and more automation opportunities will come out and companies will adopt to this automation. Yeah, next slide, please. So again, one of the other questions we asked is who is leading the RPA initiative in your organization? So as most of you might be aware, RPA is a business-driven initiative. So as the name sounds, it's the process automation, which is more business-driven. And that's where we see that in various organizations, multiple functions within an organization start their own RPA initiative so that they can address their specific pain points. We see that even in the future as well, as more and more automation opportunities come up within the finance function as well as across the organization. We will see more and more centralization of RPA initiatives, so that you create an RPA center of excellence to lead those initiatives in the future. But as of now, if you see, 28% of our survey respondents have indicated that multiple functions are involved in creating this automation journey. But we also see that finance playing a more and more important role in the automation journey as well. Yeah, next slide. So before we look at the next survey result, we also wanted to address one of the important questions you might have. What are some of the use cases for RPA in the finance function? So as you can see in this slide, across almost all of the finance activities, ranging from accounts receivable, accounts payable, or whether it might be reporting or financial planning, there are automation opportunities available. So in the interest of time, I will not go into detail of each one of them, but I believe this slide showcases that there are ample opportunities within the finance function, so that we can leverage RPA solutions for automation and make the finance executive's role more of a business partner rather than spending their time on day-to-day transactions. Yeah, next slide. So as we have seen in the previous slide, it's a glimpse of what automation can do in the finance function. Now we ask the same question to the CFOs in terms of what are some of the opportunities they see within the accounting function which has the potential for RPA. So as you can see, CFOs have indicated that activities like journal entry processing, reconciliations, billing, and collection activities are some of the top processes which they have already implemented RPA within their function right now. So you can see around 19%, 17% of the CFOs have implemented journal entry processing, RPA for journal entry processing and reconciliations. However, and we can also see that all these kinds of activities like reconciliations, billing, and collection are all very standardized rule-based and repetitive activities, which are low-hanging fruit for automation in any function across any sector. And if you also see at the in the middle, there's something called accounts receivable, where 74% of the CFOs have indicated that they're considering RPA to automate this accounts receivable function. So I think as in the digital era, as we move more and more towards contactless kind of operations, and towards like a platform or an e-commerce kind of a business model, I think customer payments and receivables will see greater automation in the future. Yeah, next slide, please. Yeah. So I'm sure, as many of you might have heard, see, data is the new oil. Everybody talks about data being the differentiator for every company across every sector. And now with the introduction of a number of digital platforms, IT systems, there is a huge amount of data being generated across functions, and that is true even within finance functions. But as you can see, the Indonesian CFOs are yet to exploit RPA solutions in the reporting area, with only very few organizations currently using RPA solutions primarily for financial and statutory reporting. However, as we see that more and more ERP solutions are implemented, more and more reporting solutions are implemented, the reporting function is one area where we see a huge potential for RPA solutions, because this is something which is again a very repetitive activity, which is rule based, and it's something which every senior management would like to see on a day-to-day basis. So we see a huge potential, and we see that somebody who implements RPA for the reporting function can differentiate themselves in the market, as well as be more competitive in the market. Yeah, next slide. Again, before we go to the next survey result, if you see a majority of the Indonesian companies, the procurement function typically reports to the CFO. And that's where we also included the procurement related processes as well as part of this report. So in line with the accounting function, the procurement function is also transforming and moving towards a role as a business partner. And we know some of the few of companies in Indonesia who actually implemented as a procurement business partner as well. So if you see that similar to the accounting function, there are a number of automation opportunities even in the procurement function. Right from whether it might be sourcing or supplier relationship management, or a travel and expense management, or even PO processing. So as more and more again ERP systems and supplier relationship management systems are implemented, we would see that RPA in the procurement function would also gain traction in the coming few years. Yeah, next slide. So in our survey, we also asked CFOs which of their procurement functions they would like to see, or they see a potential for implementation of RPA. And as you can see, invoice processing and vendor administration have, as per the CFOs, that they have the highest potential to implement RPA, and they are considering these two processes for implementing in the near future. So as you can see, as the companies start opening up after this pandemic, after the lockdown which we have, we believe it's a good time to standardize the procurement processes and also automate some of the vendor management processes. So this will enhance the experience of the overall vendor ecosystem, and also help companies to meet the customer needs in the new normal. Yeah, next slide, please. So I think this is something which is very important and relevant for the finance teams, because I believe more and more as companies become digital, as business models are changed, there is a very great focus on on upskilling and skills levels of finance executives. So if you see from our survey, 65% of the CFOs in Indonesia have indicated that finance teams are still exploring RPA solutions and still lack basic automation skill. I think this is something which we believe CFOs in the future need to address and need to address fast because as we move post the COVID-19, as businesses open up, there will be a squeeze on resources. And so every CFO needs to achieve more or the same from the same kind of resources, from the same pool of resources, or even maybe less resources. So finance functions need to become more efficient and cost effective, and RPA solutions can provide them with that advantage and with that opportunity by leveraging the RPA solutions. The next slide, please. Again, going back to the key takeaway. So when we said operational efficiency is one of the key benefit which CFOs expect by implementing RPA, it is also in line with what we see as PwC across organizations. So as per one of the study which we have conducted, finance function activity data shows that around 30 to 40% of the processing time for several key finance processes could be eliminated through automation and behavior change. So it's around 30 to 40% of the processing time can be eliminated. So that time finance executives can actually use to generate business insights and add value to the business rather than do day-to-day business activities. So it's echoing with the CFO community here as well, wherein they said that 57% of them expect operational efficiencies to be the most significant benefit. Over the next year, as businesses open up again, we see that the operational efficiency will continue to be one of the key drivers till the time the businesses come back to the pre-COVID levels, and then the journey will go forward from there. Yeah, next slide, please. So again, this is one of the very, very important aspects, which is of governance. So whenever an organization is planning for RPA solutions, it's very important to ask a few questions. One of the questions is, how will you choose your automation projects? Which are the processes which you will automate? How will bots acquire data, use data, or manage data? How will you, who is in charge of the robots? Who is responsible for making sure that the bots are actually doing stuff they're needed to do? What about cybersecurity, data privacy? So there are a number of questions around governance which you need to ask. And when we put this question to the CFOs, we see that it is still an area where our finance functions need to work upon. So 54% of the CFOs have indicated that they still have not thought about designing a governance framework. But we understand that this is linked to the one of the insight that because the adoption is still very early, we see as RPA adoptions deployments increase, there will be an increased focus on governance as well in the future. Yeah, next slide. Coming to the top risks and challenges for the adoption of RPA. So I think technical complexity has been highlighted as one of the biggest challenge. Around 61% of the CFOs have indicated that. This is very ironic because if you see most of the RPA solution vendors in the market, they promote their solutions as they are very easy to use and that anyone can learn the automation skills. So having worked with the multiple Indonesian organizations now on their automation journey, we see that the truth is somewhere in between. It is CFOs believe that RPA solutions are technically complex to implement, primarily because most of the organizations, the processes are still not standardized. There are a number of exception scenarios, there is a lot of ad hoc activities which are done. So I think the standardization, if there is more standardization within the business processes, we believe that this challenge which CFOs have indicated of technical complexity of the solution will be addressed very easily. So as RPA is beginning to trend upward in Indonesia, so if you see 37% of the CFOs have indicated that the lack of talent is one of the other aspect or the risk in the RPA adoption. I'm sure our friends from UiPath will also address this in their presentation. So I will skip that as of now. So in the next year, as we see more and more RPA deployments, we believe these challenges would continue to be there. But however, the lack of ownership and operational risk will also come to the fore as more and more RPA deployments are made. Yeah, next slide, please. So lastly, this is the last question wherein we asked around RPA investments per se. So if you see, around 94% of the CFOs have indicated that they are going to either increase their investment or continue to remain the same in the future. So one important discussion which CFOs grapple with regarding to investment on RPA is the return on investment. So Indonesia being typically a labor intensive country, most of the time there's a comparison between the implementation cost of an RPA solution vis-a-vis the manpower cost. However, we believe that it is important that the RPA implementation of RPA solution has more advantages, much more advantages besides only cost savings. For example, robots do not make any mistakes. I mean, as long as you configure them correctly, they will continue to do the same activity again and again without any mistakes. So I think increasing the quality of your deliverable is also one of the key ingredient when you are looking at an RPA investment. Yeah, the next slide, please. So I think this is a list of some of the learnings which we had from our implementations globally. I will not go through each one of them because it's also part of our report, so you can look at it. But I think one of the things which I want to highlight is number one, you need to carefully select the automation areas which you want to look at, and also you should also look at process refinement during automation. I think Bu Juliana, who is part of this session, will also address that in the panel discussion, wherein standardizing the business process before you going for automation is a very important consideration. Yeah, next slide. So this is the end of my presentation, and you can download our full report as well on our website. So now we have heard a lot about RPA, and I've taken you through what is RPA, some of the key findings of the survey. Now let me introduce Michael Anthony, who is the UiPath sales pre-sales engineer based out of Jakarta. So Michael is quickly going to show you how easy it is to build a robot and show you one in action. So this is primarily we wanted to address that the challenge which the CFOs have indicated of technical complexity of an RPA solution. So we want to address that straightforward by showing a demo of it. So over to you, Michael.
Thank you, Raffi. Selamat pagi, Bapak Ibu. Pagi ini saya akan coba tunjukkan ke kita semua bagaimana kita bisa how easy it is to build a robot and how a robot can run. Okay, so for example, we have a small application here. Kita punya aplikasi yang kecil di sini yang bisa kita pakai. Anggap saja ini aplikasi yang ada di kantor Bapak Ibu. It's the same, hanya beda aplikasi saja, nggak masalah. Kita punya fitur namanya fitur recording, bisa kita klik di sini. Nah, di sini kita bisa langsung menjalankan pekerjaan yang biasa kita lakukan di kantor. Robot akan merecord dan akan kemudian nanti akan dijadikan pekerjaan untuk si robotnya. So for the first one, kita bisa buka aplikasinya terlebih dahulu, and then kita bisa ketik username, kemudian password juga kita bisa klik. Let's say it's a password, kita juga bisa centang supaya password kita tidak kelihatan. And then we can click on the login. Nah, ini masih manusia, Ibu ya. Ini kita sedang mengajarkan robotnya untuk bagaimana sih si robot harus berjalan. Nah, kemudian kita juga bisa put in some data here. Say 100, 200, 300. Now, the last one is we can click the accept here. Kalau kita klik accept, Bapak Ibu perhatikan transaction number-nya berubah. Dari tadi 797.880, sekarang 797.881. Jadi sudah seperti itu, oke, kita bisa klik save and exit. Dan itu sudah, setelah selesai kita save and exit, sudah jadi satu pekerjaan untuk si robot. Robot harus input data ke sistem tadi, login, buka aplikasi, input data, kemudian klik save. Nah, setelah kita mengajarkan si robot, kita bisa close aplikasinya, and then kita bisa klik run di sini. Nah, Bapak Ibu lihat ini robotnya sudah jalan, Bapak Ibu. Jadi bukan saya lagi yang ngetik, dia akan jalan robotnya. Jadi sesimpel itu Bapak Ibu ya untuk membuat si robot berjalan. Kalau tadi Pak Raffi sempat address bahwa ada isu di mana technical complexity is one of the biggest issue. We believe in UiPath we have an advance in ease of use. Now, boleh di share slides berikutnya Mbak Ayu. Bayu, boleh di-share slide selanjutnya. Saya juga akan share sedikit Bapak Ibu. Tadi kalau kita sudah lihat robotnya, bagaimana robotnya berjalan, salah satu use case di Indonesia yang ini terjadi, ini berjalan sekitar 2019 awal. Ini salah satu use case di insurance company di Indonesia. Kayak Bapak Ibu bisa lihat itu Sompo Insurance. Proses yang mereka automate adalah proses settlement untuk receipt mereka. Jadi prosesnya kurang lebih seperti mereka mesti download dulu dari website salah satu website mereka, kemudian download, mereka mesti simpan dalam Excelnya kemudian dilakukan reconciliation terlebih dahulu. Setelah dilakukan reconciliation, mereka mesti menginput data yang data yang hasil dari rekonsiliasi Excel tadi ke dalam sistem, and then sistem tersebut akan menghasilkan receipt ini akan dikirim ke masing-masing customer. Oke. Nah, sebelumnya mereka melakukan ini sekitar 15 menit per proses, per receipt, memakan waktu sampai 200 jam per bulan. Nah, kalau Bapak Ibu lihat dengan robot ini yang mereka share langsung ke kita, dengan robot mereka bisa menyelesaikan proses tadinya sekitar 15 menit jadi tinggal 35 detik. Dan kalau kita bisa lihat juga di sini Bapak Ibu, satu robot sebenarnya per robot bisa jalan sekitar 720 jam per bulan, karena robot punya waktu 24 jam, tidak seperti manusia. Dia bisa kerja sepanjang hari dan tanpa ada libur juga. Nah, robot specifically untuk case yang ini, dia hanya butuh waktu sekitar 9 jam per bulan. Jadi, kalau tadi kita lihat ada technical complexity, ada salah satu isunya, di sini kita bisa lihat bahwa RPA ini sangat-sangat mudah untuk produk kita sangat mudah digunakan, dan it's very very compatible for small deployment or even large deployment. Jadi biasanya ada yang mulai dengan small deployment, sure we can do that, and we can also address a larger deployment.
Yeah, Michael. One thing I want to add, it's not on the slide, is that this implementation took less than 1 month.
Yeah, it takes around 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Right, Kev? Yeah.
Yep.
So yeah, implementation is also done in about 3 weeks. Jadi it's very very fast in terms of deployment. Okay, I think we can continue. Val, my partner Val will continue with the presentation. Thank you for your time.
Yep. Thanks, Michael. Thanks for taking us through building a very small process and taking us through the benefits of RPA. So this is Vail. I would like to just spend the next 15 minutes in talking a bit about the CFO's perspective of what an RPA could help. Right. So I'm going to talk more from an internal CFO rather than a salesperson. So I'm not trying to sell anything to you. This is what I experienced and what you could benefit as a CFO. At a high level, let's start this, right? So what is the CFO's role in a company? Assuming that you are running a car along with your CEO, so your CEO is driving the car and you are the navigator sitting next to him or her and helping her navigate. So what you do on a day-to-day basis is you look at your day-to-day cash flows, how much you're going to collect from your customers, how much you need to pay your vendors, how much of tax you need to pay, what is the compliance you need to manage within your country or outside of country if in case you are doing business across multiple countries, right? So that I would say is your day-to-day activity. You can relate that to the potholes when you're driving a car along with your CEO. You're on a journey and you need to just help him say, okay, there is a stone or there's a pothole. You need to probably take a slight deviation or go straight or go to the left or right. And that's a day-to-day activity of a CFO, managing the potholes if you're driving. Again, when you're driving, you also look at what is next. So you look at around like 300, 400 meters away from where you are, and probably you see a signal or you see an intersection, and you guide your CFO and the CEO as to like what you need to do, whether you need to apply the brake in stopping or you need to accelerate. Probably the signal shows that there are 15 seconds to turn red. So you just look at that and then just help him navigate. That is something like what you manage your quarterly financials, right? Whether you look at your day-to-day functions and then arrive at like whether I met my monthly goals, whether I met my quarterly goals, whether we are filing the returns for the respective quarters, are we sending the details to the investors, are we communicating to the investors? So those are all the quarterly or the short-term goals, I would say. Next, you also need to look at what is beyond, right? Your CEO has got a goal, your company has got a goal. You probably want to increase the turnover of your company threefold or fourfold in the next 5 years. And that's the ultimate goal. What and how can you do that? You can do that by acquiring some companies, or you can grow organically and increasing your capabilities in achieving the goals of the company. That is, I would call it as a horizon or the end destination. That could be probably 100 miles from where you are. And that is the role of a CFO at a high level. So if you're going to be fully busy with just looking at your pothole, you never have time to look at what is the horizon, which is 100 miles down the line, right? That's where RPA can help you. And I'll cover that in the subsequent slides as to how RPA can help you in navigating to your day-to-day activities, your medium-term goals, as well as your long-term goals. I would like to touch upon a bit about compliance, because when you talk about automating, compliance comes into mind and people say like, am I actually having the right solution which will help ensure I'm compliant with my local regulations? It could be your tax compliances, it could be labor law compliances, it could be your security law compliances, right? And if in case your compliances are taken care, don't you think that you would be able to move faster? And I would say compliances are good. The reason is it's like a brake, it helps you to accelerate faster. Going back to the same story which I mentioned about you traveling with the CEO, why do we have brakes? A lot of people think that compliance is bad because it's going to help me stop. It's going to stop the growth of the company. It will not allow me to be aggressive in growing my business. I take a contrary view on that because compliances help you to accelerate, in fact, and move faster. Because when you're driving, you need to take a turn. You generally try to slow down a bit, apply your brakes, and then that helps you to accelerate. And that's the way I look at compliance. And it also helps you to protect the basics of your business, because why do we have compliances in terms of tax laws or labor laws is to ensure you serve the country and paying the taxes. You serve your employees by paying them the necessary wages or pay the respective taxes for the employees. Right? And that's where even RPA can help you in terms of compliances. The next one is speed. When I talk about technology, Ravi covered a bit about what an RPA can do and help you, right? I would like to add a couple of more points. So you don't need to actually do any motivational talks to them. So where do you spend most of your time as a CEO or a CFO or a leader in a business? You end up spending a lot of time in motivating your employees. You need to ensure that there's no conflict between departments. And with RPA, you don't need to do any of that. All you need to do is just configure your bot, as Ravi mentioned, ensure that your processes are aligned. Then it would run without asking for food, water, drinks, motivation, nothing at all, right? And if you look at the bigger picture, there is a slight cost involved in applying RPA solutions to your environments. But if you look at the bigger picture, it saves a lot because your employee element is removed and your basics are taken care. It will just run how much ever fast you want, as long as you configure it in the right way, right? That's where technology will help you to speed up your processes. It will help you to predict, right? What is the CEO or the company expect from a CFO is like you need to just not just give the data, you need to give them information. Information is very important for a CFO, for him to take a decision and also help the company and the CEO to take a decision, right? When you're going to just spend most of your time in day-to-day activities, right, you will never see the horizon. So that's where RPA can help. I would like to just give a small uh, analogy here. All of us have studied in school, and what is the biggest nightmare we had when we were studying, right? You were there for your examinations, right? Most of the time, what we do is like we spend 90% of the time in looking for the materials, and we spend 10% of our time in preparing for the examinations, right? Just look back 20 years ago. It is definitely true with most of us. Probably there are a few people who are very brilliant who never bother about examination, but it applies to most of us, right? And that's where RPA kind of solutions can help. It can just take 10% of your time and give you 90% of the time where you can actually read, understand, and then do what is right for your examination. The same analogy goes with your examinations as well as your business. So it will give you ample time for you to think. It will give you data and information which you can actually help grow the business. Right? So as I said, it just helps you to get a lot of time from your day-to-day activities. As I said, you look at the horizon, you don't look at your day-to-day activities because day-to-day activities are taken care of by the RPA. RPA helps you to do your routine activities. Like for instance, you have 10,000 invoices that you need to process in a day, or 10,000 orders to be processed in a day. All those things will be done automatically as long as you configure the processes right and then tell the bot what it need to do, right? So it takes you from the weeds. It helps you to look at the horizon and ensure that you look at what is big and better for the company, right? Looking at the next slide, I would like to touch upon this topic of hyper automation. You heard about RPA from Ravi, and Michael gave a small demo of RPA. There are much more details which you can do in an RPA. There are bigger solutions and tools which will help you to capture ideas, because what happens is most of the companies start their RPA journey and they kind of lose sight over a period of time because they really don't know what to do beyond a point. They forget why they started it and then they just while away. There are tools, we call it as like automation hub within our company. It can help you to capture all the ideas which you have in your company and then store it. You don't need to prioritize all of them. You start with very small processes which will help you to automate the basic work. It could be as small as like $5,000-$10,000 with some implementation cost, and it can help you to scale. And over a period of time, once your first bot works and it's successful, you can go on to the next process, which is less important compared to the first one, then on and on and on, because it's a repository where you can store all your data, all your ideas, and help you to process it. There are tools which also will help you to take your processes and then tell you what to automate. There are tools which can actually look at all your environments. All you need to do is plug in this application. It will map all your processes. You might have heard a term called process mining. Process mining will help you to map all your processes, and it will even give you suggestions as to which are all the processes which are ripe or matured enough for you to automate, right? Then there are processes which are called screenshots. It can actually take each and every step of your process and document it. You might be aware that if you have, say, two people in your team, and let's assume one of them leave or two of them leave, you're kind of stuck. You really won't be able to do anything because you need to train somebody and you're stuck there. There are tools which will help you to take screenshots of each and every process that you do. It will document and then tell you what you need to automate and then what you need to probably do it manually, right? At a high level, apart from RPA, you also have tools like ML, AI, and a lot of other advanced analytics, which will help you to get the best out of RPA, because it is not just transaction processing. Over a period of time, it will actually learn from the data which you have. It will actually configure itself and then tell you what you need to do better. And then it will give you more information rather than just giving data. So coming to RPA, how UiPath can help you, right? We actually roll out a lot of free Bs to our customers, and you don't need to be a customer for you to even enjoy these benefits. We give trial licenses to communities, and then even for enterprises, we have trial licenses. Um, if you would like to get in, just go sign up, and you can download those licenses and you can use them, and then just try for yourself as to how it works. And it's amazing how it can actually change your life. Right? We also have UiPath Academy. Academy helps you in training you. There are free trainings available. You can just sign up and then you can become an expert on the technical side as well as on the process side, and you can get yourself certified and then have your team members sign up. And generally, people who take up these trainings are very proud. When you log into LinkedIn, you would see a lot of people posting that, okay, I got this training done and I was certified in UiPath Academy. The next one is we have a huge community of thousands of people who actually engage themselves in doing a lot of activities. They develop bots, build bots, they share their thoughts, they engage in the community and then like help each other. And you can make use of that as well. Coming next, in terms of the support and enablement, we have custom trainings and hackathons being run by UiPath, which would help you big time in ensuring that you get into the UiPath RPA journey in a very easy and faster way, right? Then we also have our customer success team. Once you sign up, we help you in implementation, and we also help you in supporting your robots and ensure that that's running well, and then your process doesn't never stop, even if your process changes. We also have something called the Immersion Lab. If in case you have time, you can walk into our office. We would be able to showcase what we have and then help you build bots and help you in your RPA journey. Next, I would like to touch upon a bit about our relationship with PwC. PwC is one of our premium customer. They are a diamond partner. They have tied up with us globally. And the last couple of years, 2018 and 19, they were the partner of the year for us. And they have signed up that they would automate most of the processes which they use in their internal processes. Around 50,000 employees of PwC are using UiPath's bots. And apart from that, there are 8,000 plus employees of PwC who are RPA practitioners. Along with UiPath, we would be willing to take you in a very good high growth journey where you would be able to automate whatever you feel is time consuming and which is not adding value. And with that, I would just like to take to the last slide. For you to look at RPA, I think few of you who are in the call must be somebody who was actually gone through the journey or probably in the middle of the journey or just started. From my perspective, how RPA can succeed is you ideally should get senior management support, because if you're doing something like, okay, somebody in the accounting team is trying to automate an RPA process, it may not really go well, because it'll be good for you to get the buy-in from the senior management. Support and the executive sponsorship from the senior management is very important for RPA to be successful, because employees may think that RPA is going to kill and take away all my job. And it's very important for you to get employees buy-in also. You probably need to educate them, you need to upskill them and unleash their potential. And I can assure you that how 30 years ago, the computers, everybody was fearing that, okay, it's going to take away their job. We still have jobs and most of us are even prospering because of computers. RPA is something similar or even better. It's going to definitely ensure that, okay, your employees are empowered. They will be proud that they are working on RPA and trying to automate it. Right. Again, my advice to you is like start small, pick up one or two very important processes, then try to automate it, see the success and build on the success. Next, as a next step, once you get or taste the blood or taste success, I would say build a small center of excellence. I would even say build an automation strategy for your company. Look at how much of investment you're making, how much of return you're getting. I can assure you, your return on investment will be in months, not in years, like all your other digital transformation journey. Your investments will be turned around very fast. Right? Next is like what PwC has done. Do an enterprise-wide automation and a strategy, and then try to discover what are the things which you can automate. There are enough tools, and we would be more than happy to help you in your journey. We also have tools which can help you in your AI and ML, apart from RPA. That's where you will be able to get the best potential out of RPA. And with that, I end. And thanks for your time, and then thanks for your patient listening. Looks like we have a huge number of participants. That shows the importance of RPA, and we are here to help you. Thank you. Over to you, Shubi.
Thank you very much, Well. You can hear me okay, right?
Yep.
Okay, good. So with that, I think we'll move to our next session, which is, I think, the most interactive sessions. And before I start, I wanted to encourage the audience as well. If you have any questions, please post it on the Q&A room. We will try to answer as much as we can. I think my colleagues, Henki, Ravi, as well as our UI friend as well, has already answered some of them. In case there's some outstanding, I think we will try to gather them and answer it separately after the webinar. So with that, I would like to welcome back our distinguished panelists and speaker, my colleagues, Bu Juliana, Ravi, Mas Henki, Vels, Kevin, Rika, and also Michael. May I ask everyone to put the cameras on, please? Yep. So I think as there are few takes as Ravi has pointed out and Val has mentioned as well. I think Val mentioned it requires a strong sponsorship, leadership support for the RPA to be successful. And I think Ravi has highlighted there is a need to be carefully select on the process area. So I would like to actually address my first questions to Bu Rika from PT Dwidaya, just to looking at, from the CFO perspective, Bu Rika. We understand that RPA is pretty much a new thing in your company when you first introduce it. So can you share with us and also to the audience as well, what is your strategy when you first start the onboarding of this RPA? And also, what are some of the challenges you actually face throughout this RPA adoption process, Bu Rika, if you will?
Subi, I'll answer. Maybe I'll answer the challenge first, and then I'll explain the strategy to overcome the challenge. So,
Sure.
Based on my experience on implementing the RPA, the first challenge is designing the detailed process itself. For example, we are implementing the RPA for our reconciliation process on the cost of revenues. This cost of revenues we have a various revenue stream with different reconciliation methods. And the challenge is our teams tend to generalize the process of reconciliation for all the revenue stream, while in actual it has a different reconciliation method. So when we do the building the business case to ensure the completeness of the process, there are lots of missing links, and then we have to revisit the process flow again. So like the Rafi said, it's very important to define the detailed process for the flow, because the robot will only do the flow that we already draw, right? So if we miss one flow, then we have to revisit it again when we do the testing. So that's the first challenge, designing the detailed process flow. And then the second thing is the acceptance itself from our employees, because when we do the implementation of the RPA, it means that some of the tasks of our employee will be taken over, right? So there will be a kind of resistance to prolong the implementation, because there's some of they are feeling insecure of losing of their job because of this RPA on board. So our strategy to overcome those challenges is we try to communicate with our team that this RPA is supposed to make their life easier, and then with those tasks taken away from them means that they are given the opportunity to grow, opportunity to learn something new, then they can fit into better position in the company. So we do the communication, top-down communication, encourage the team to support the implementation of the RPA. I think from me, Subi.
Yep. Thanks very much. That's very true. I think that's Burika has spotted on, similar to our observation as well. When we wanted to assign the particular task to the robot, I think it has to be very specific. In terms of the process flow, as well as what sort of the output that actually we are aiming to have. Yeah. And then on that topic, I think that links very well as well. I'm going to turn to my fellow partners, Bu Juliana, as well, who is pretty much focused in this particular area, Yul. So I think maybe perhaps you could share as well from the finance process and controls area. How do you see that these RPAs can actually help and brings a lot of benefits to the clients? And also from your conversations with your clients, what do they want to achieve out of this RPA? Maybe you could
Hello.
share some insight on that. Yes.
Can you hear me well?
Yes, very clear.
Yeah, okay. So I guess a lot of my clients expect efficiency in their processes, especially in the area where they have to hire lots of resources to do voluminous and repetitive tasks like data entry. And I think you keep on mentioning that already in the first presentation by Rafi. And when we have a discussion with our client about the use of RPA and how this robot is actually equivalent to 3 employees, they're really excited to explore more on this implementation of the RPA. And also, what they really need is to get a faster information reporting because they need to make faster decision in these, rapid changes during this COVID situation in particular. So a lot of processes that we see in our clients are still manual. They do recapitulation using Excel basis. Like for example, the production report generated by my plantation client needs around 2 to 3 days, to reach to the head office. So not to mention that, using Excel is really prone to human error. So accuracy is always an issue. So this is also the area where they usually typically need help for the robot to do the activity. And then from the other point of view, we keep on talking about how RPA can help the management, the first line of defense. But I just recently talked to a client where they also need RPA to help their internal audit division, where they need internal audit to support the continuous monitoring process by using RPA. As compared to the old times audit or the traditional audit, where they can only find issue when internal audit come to visit, right? By using RPA and then give them a continuous monitoring report, they would like to have anomalies at a real-time basis and a faster way as compared to the traditional audit. But of course, they have a lot of concerns in implementing RPA. I think Burika already mentioned some of them. The first concern I would say about the cost of implementation. So maybe we have Val here and also Kevin. Yeah, this is also the area that we can talk about. And then next is when Rafi says about the standardization of the process. The other concern that they have is that the data they have right now is non-standard, and how the robot can analyze this data if the process itself right now is non-standard. So what they want to have before they implement the RPA, usually they need to standardize the processes to gather the data in a standard way for the robot to read and do the work more efficiently.
Yep. Thanks very much, Yul. I think that's very true as well. I think just on the cost side, actually, I just looked to the chat Q&A. There's a lot of excitement. I can see that questions coming out from a number of participants, like how much was actually the cost to subscribe the full versions, and also the question about what is the company size that usually invests in this particular RPAs. So on that investment side, I think I wanted to perhaps start with Kevin. If you can share your experience, if a company wanted to start, for this cost, or we should call it actually as an investment, your observations in this particular perhaps, and later on, perhaps Fel can also add on as well. Kevin, please.
Yeah, hi. So why don't I start by talking about our customers? I mean, obviously that's what I know. So we've got over 60 customers now in Indonesia, right? And they range from smaller companies all the way up to, the biggest companies in Indonesia, right? So most of them, I have to admit, most of our customers are enterprise customers. I think our smallest customer has about 200 employees. And so going back to what Ravi was talking about, I mean, this technology pretty much applies to everybody. It really depends on where the use cases are, right? I think from a cost perspective, the most important thing is not really the actual cost, right? It's choosing the right product and choosing the right partner or consultant to help you with your RPA, because as Ravi's talk showed, that one of the main concerns is the technical complexity, and you need to keep that in mind. But you also need to keep in mind what you're going to do with this technology in the future, right? So RPA is now evolving already. It's evolving to use machine learning for decision making, right? If you have somebody like PwC working with you, they will make sure that everything is done so you can evolve your RPA to accommodate these kinds of things. So one of the things that I saw in Ravi's presentation is that 75% of the CFO surveyed were looking at things like accounts receivable and billing reconciliation, right? So those are processes that only involve simple decision making. So again, a basic kind of process to implement, right? And then when he showed tax related processes and adjustments, I mean, there was a drop of about 20% in CFOs who are looking at those processes. And the reason, I think, is because those processes involve more advanced decision making. But the thing is, it's right around the corner. It's coming, where you're going to be able to use machine learning models to implement those kinds of processes. And you need somebody who has expertise in those areas to really make it happen. And whatever you start with today needs to be able to evolve to support that tomorrow. So that's so in short, I think the cost of deployments really depends on what your goals are, right?
Yep.
Yep.
Okay.
So I would like to add to what just Kevin mentioned.
Yes, please.
I would put it this way, right? So robot can be used not only for enterprises. You can use it for your day-to-day activities. I use it for my personal use and for doing some work for my kids. And if they want me to do some notes for them for their exams, I actually use a bot. I download some materials, convert it the way I want it, I configure it. And it's not necessarily bigger corporations. There are companies who are clients for us who are just 2-3 people. There are a lot of startups actually. They don't want to increase their headcount and then automate it. They want to start RPA and automation from the time they are like 4 or 5 people, right? You don't need to be big for you to do RPA. You can start small so that you never hire more people and then try to automate it later, right? And it can be used even by individuals. Our vision, at least our company, is like we want to have a bot for everybody. That's our vision. We have 7 billion people in the world. We want to have 7 billion bots, and that's our vision at some point of time. And we would get there, and it's coming. We can't stop it. And I would suggest everybody log into our website, download the free version, try it for yourself. It's very easy. When you get into enterprise, you may need some support, but you can configure this much easier. Just to add.
Thanks, Val. I think you're absolutely right. For the audience to actually log on and see what is actually cost will be the right step to do. I think there's a question as well coming from the audience about actually how to convince the senior management. I think from Pak Cahyo that this is not another cost, yeah, but this is something that actually can brings up benefit. So Fel and Kevin, perhaps you can add on as well, to that, how actually to be able to convene to senior management or leadership, because obviously it's very critical for the RPAs to be succeed. So on that regards, perhaps you have some few points to share.
Yeah, I mean, typically in Indonesia, we've done either us or I'm sure, or our partners have done POCs, and our customers have used those POCs to do business cases and to present to their boards to justify the cost of implementing RPA. And by and large, I mean, not by and large, always. I mean, as long as the right business case, the right process is used, it always shows positive ROI.
Yep.
In 100% of the cases, right? So that's the key. The key is really, and I think Ravi and Vel both talked about this, is which process you choose to implement, and for that you need to definitely work with a good consulting partner.
Just to add to Kevin what he mentioned, the return on investment could be as short as like 6 months. Whatever you invest, you recover. And if it's a complex one, it might take some time. But the biggest advantage I see or rather how you can convince your senior management is you're going to not necessarily eliminate the human errors, right? You're going to do it faster. And the biggest, from my point of view, I've run bigger teams. The biggest pain or the biggest struggle which all of us as managers have is like try to motivate people. You need to just ensure that, okay, they don't fight between each other, conflict management. You don't need to do any of that. I think I'm putting this more on the lighter side. The return on investment is like you save on all this effort. Like you as a manager, if you're spending 50% of your time in trying to manage people and then resolve conflicts, you get those 50% of your time back. You can do bigger things and strategic things, just to add.
Yep. Thanks, Val. I think just on that, before I move to the next question, Bu Rika, I believe you have your hands-on experience as well, to get the support from the leadership. So can you add as well, how you managed to convince the senior leadership that RPA can actually bring more benefits to Dwi Daya?
Yeah. Before we appoint or decide to use this RPA on our company, we do some research and cost and benefit calculation, of course. So we do calculate all the costs that occur for doing those tasks, and then the efficiency that we are going to get. So we do all the calculation, cost and benefit, and then considering the high turnover of the employees, because the one who done the administrative and repetitive task is mostly the lowest level of the employees, right? And on those level, the turnover is quite high. So it will the cost is not only on the employee cost, but it's also on the recruitment cost, on the training cost. So we combine all the costs, we compare with the investment of the RPA, and we see that this will be have a future benefit for the company, especially on the operation excellence. So then the management try to decide to, okay, let's have a try. So right now we are implementing the pilot project, and we are looking forward for another phase for the implementation of the RPA. So basically, is the foundation is cost and benefit calculation.
Yep. Thanks, Bu Rika. I think this is also something that actually a bit has been touched on as well by Ravi. So perhaps I next wanted to have a questions to Ravi as well. So I think you have laid out a numbers of good findings where essentially from our survey, it is clear that the adoptions of RPA in Indonesia still at the early stage. So I think through webinar we can definitely confirm to that. Yeah. So what will you recommend then the first next step for perhaps for the companies that wanted to embark this RPA journey? What sort of the starting points that they need to consider, Ravi?
Yeah, so that's a good question, Subi. So I think one of the first thing which I see, and also I see from the questions which are coming in, is again a basic understanding of what RPA is. I believe from the questions like coming in terms of whether RPA can do predictive analysis or prediction, or can it what is the kind of investments which we need to make, whether we need to change the applications. So I think fundamentally, I think on that point, all of us should be very clear, and I don't know whether my UiPath colleagues will agree with me on this, that I'm being too simplistic, but I think fundamentally it is like hiring a person. So you are hiring one person into your team, which is a robot. Obviously, it is not a person, but I think at the end of the day, hiring that person, you don't need to change any of your applications. You don't need to change your ERP system. You don't need to make any modifications to your any other existing IT systems. This person or this robot can come in and start doing any of the activities which you configure the robot to do. So it can do. So if you have, for example, a predictive forecasting business application, and you as an individual are running that on a day-to-day basis, you can make the robot run that application instead of a person running it. If you have a business planning system, or you have for example an online portal where you are selling some products and services, and you daily download your sales data from that online portal, and if you have a person doing it right now, instead of that person, you can have a robot do the same thing.
Yep.
So I think essentially it is not it is not a I mean, let me, maybe I can say that it is not like a complex technology solution like an SAP, like a like a ERP, or like a reporting solution, or like a business plan. It is not a complex technology solution. It is a simple technology. Obviously it's a technology solution, which helps you to manage and do activities across these different applications that you already have. So I think fundamentally, I think the basic understanding all organizations should have is that this is a simple technology solution. This is not a complex beast like what we have in other IT systems. Having confirmed that, I think the next step is obviously upskilling your own teams in terms of understanding what RPA is, what solutions which we have. Like we have seen, there are UiPath has a number of free solutions. Free trainings as well to upskill your finance team. And then the last one I would say is identifying the correct processes for automation. As Burika has mentioned, I think there are a number of everything seems easy to automate, but once you start looking at the detail of each of these processes, there will be a number of exceptions you might be doing on a day-to-day basis, and handling those exceptions becomes most difficult. So I think these are the three things which I would say, Asubi.
So I just want to add to what Ravi just said, and I completely agree with him. Just for everybody's information, right? There are a lot of companies who are listed in the US are actually calling out how many digital workers they are having in their annual reports. You might go and see them. Apart from the number of employees, many companies have started reporting the number of digital workers who they have in US, just for information.
Yep, sure. Good info. Thanks, Val. I think what Ravi has alluded early on is very true, and this is actually something that I would like to hear from my colleague Henki as well, who also have the hands-on experience in terms of helping the clients with the adoptions. So, Ki, just wanted to get your perspective in terms of the real adoptions. What are the success factors that you think for the clients, especially those perhaps with not much knowledge about what RPA is, can actually succeed the adoptions?
Ya,
Okay. So basically, just a sharing from my experience, I think the key success factor is what have been mentioned so far. I think one of the critical one is to identify the process to standardize it, so that because the robot will only work as it is being instructed. So unless the process has been identified for all the scenarios, there will be a lot of exceptions that will need to be handled. I think Burika and Rafi has also touched base on that. And also another thing for the success factor itself is to have the employee upskilled if we are going to implement it by our internal team. So what we have been doing with our clients is that we always encourage the clients if they prefer to have the consultants to help them implement in the first stage. We always suggest them to allocate one or more of their employees to start onboarding in this RPA implementation or development journey as well. Because I think I understand that most of you from the companies would not want to be fully dependent on consultants, especially if we are going to use this technology for a longer term. So what we are always suggesting them is, whilst for the first step, it's always better to have a consultant to adapt or to adopt the technology first, because yeah, normally companies will need someone who has the expertise. And then throughout the process, what we are also doing as the consultant is also doing the transfer knowledge throughout the process, especially when we are handing over what we have been doing so far. So with that, we expect that their internal team will be able to continue on the journey later on, because as Val mentioned, I think starting the journey would be one thing, and also maintaining the processes would be another thing as well that would need to be taken into consideration. I think in brief, those are the key success factor.
Yeah, I just want to
Very
add.
clear.
Yeah, I just want to add
Sure,
just one
Kevin.
comment. So Hanky is absolutely right. So our most successful deployment to date in Indonesia is actually exactly that. So it's a combination of in-house people working with a consultant, and I think it's now 8 months. In 8 months' time, they've been able to deploy processes that are saving them something like 700,000 hours a year in labor. So that is the best model.
Thanks, Kevin. Yeah, I think before I understood we only have 8 minutes left. So before I close, actually, I wanted to have some closing remark from each of you. But before that, I think very last questions that I wanted to ask to my colleague as well, Bu Juliana. And I think the key part, as Burika mentioned early on, right, to really embark or start the journey, you have to be very specific on the process, to have the process standardized first. I think this has been mentioned as well by Ravi. So you'll on the standardizations of the processes, yeah. Can you share a bit, your observation of experience on how normally the clients should be actually, get a better success rate? Yeah, whether they are starting from totally scratch or whether they already have something going into the standardizations. Perhaps you can add in that.
Yeah, I think first of all, upon identifying which process that you want to go for RPA, and then you have to understand what are the scenarios that you have within that processes, because when the robot process the reconciliation, for example, they need to have to know how many scenarios are there, right? So you have to first identify the grouping the possible scenarios there, and then after that, how the robot will work to match to do the work, and then after that, you need to also identify what data are required. And when obtaining that data, sometimes you have to look at your processes, because those data usually you gather in the front end of your process, and therefore you need to acknowledge, like, for example, these are mandatory columns that within the customer acquisition, for example, you need to fill in such data, and it's mandatory because in lots of my clients, those mandatory data is basically missing, and therefore the robot cannot do the work as necessary, and they need to do it like more inefficiently by taking it from the other sources, for example. Yes, so I think those are the elements that you need to understand when you do the fixing the business process prior to RPA.
Yep. Thank you very much, Yul. I think that's spot on as well. You mentioned actually another good point actually about the data things, yeah, which is very critical. Where a lot of time when we want to instruct the robots to apply, from my own experience, you have to make sure that you provide them with the right data, in particular the right source of data, where to get the data from. So I actually wanted to ask for a very short, perhaps a closing statements from each one of you. What sort of the key takeaways or you want to leave the audience with throughout these sessions? So maybe I'll start with Ravi first, who has presented the survey report. Ravi, please.
Yeah, but I think as a closing statement, what I would like to say is obviously RPA has a great potential for the finance function to achieve the operational efficiencies they want to achieve. However, having said that, I think it's critical and very important to identify the automation opportunities and also build the necessary skill sets. I think that would be the statement.
Thanks. Perhaps next to Bu Rika from Dwi Dayak. What is your advice perhaps for the audience who wanted to embark this?
I think because now is the era of digitalization, so we have to automate all the flow as much as possible, because if we depend on the human intervention, the human error will be high. So it's very recommended to export this RPA to help finance and accounting function to be operate more effectively.
Right. Thanks, Bu Rika. Maybe from Fel, from your own experience as a CFO, as well as your UiPath head as well, please.
Yeah. Yes. Thanks. So from my point of view, my advice is to try to start small, taste one or two success, and build on that success. But before you automate any processes, try to standardize it, because when it is not working, it's easy to blame RPA and then say it's not working. So standardize it, pick up one or two, taste success, and build on it.
Yeah. Kevin, from your side.
Hi, yeah. The comment I have is really about cost, because this is what I go through pretty much every day. I see a lot of customers who are just focused on, cost. What is it going to cost to buy licenses? What is it going to cost to implement? And I've seen quite a few projects that are not efficient because of that reason. So I think you should not just focus on the absolute cost of deploying RPA, but you should look at the overall benefits that you're going to get. I think that's really important.
Yep. And I think that links very well to Val mentioned about actually you can start small. Yeah, starting, for example, with one robot first, doing certain activities. Along the way, you can grab the experience of how robot actually can help you to improve your processes.
Absolutely. I mean, one robot can do quite a bit of work. So there's a lot you can do with just one robot.
They never sleep, right?
Exactly.
Okay, so maybe from Henki, any key message you want to leave the audience with?
Yeah, I think the key message, I think it's still linked to what Kevin and Val has mentioned. I think if you are going to start with this RPA journey, it's best to pick a process that you can identify the benefit easily, and also especially for those process that you have also standardized throughout the whole process.
Yep. Thanks, Kip. Yeah. Michael, I understood that Michael has been responding to a number of questions from the audience. And from your hands-on experience, Michael, anything you want to share as a closing remark?
I think it's in line with the others' remarks. I think it's best to start with a small process that have a standardized that we already know how to standardize it, because doing something large will not give you the best, will not always give you the best result. Sometimes the small one is the one who will give you the best one.
Very true. Last but not least, my colleague Yul, your advice perhaps to the audience on the embarking the RPA journey.
Yeah, I see a lot of my clients during this COVID period, because the business slowing down, transaction is reducing. They are now trying to fix their back-end processes, including implementing RPA. So I think at least you need to start thinking about that now, because your competitors might already implement it by the end of this, COVID. Yeah, so that's from me.
Yep. Thanks very much, you. I think obviously, as you have been hearing from all these panelists, as that's embarking this RPA journey is one of the perhaps I would say is one of the more easier way, to embark the digital transformations to improve the efficiency in your finance and also operations processes. There are a number of questions that, unfortunately, given the time, we are unable to answer it for now. But what we will be do is that we will call all of them, and then we will responded to you separately, after the webinars in maybe 2 or 3 days time. And as you can see on the deck here, we have the contacts that if you have any further interest or questions, you can contact any one of us. And I think with that, I will conclude our webinar this morning. Thank you very much for all of the audiences for your time to joining today. And also, once again, I wanted to thank a lot our distinguished panelists and speakers for sharing a lot of variable as well as practical insights to all of us. So thank you. Hope you all have a great day, and see you again next time at PwC webinars. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you.